Hi, Database. Thank you for joining us today. I'm here with Bobby Napiltonia, new CEO of Live Objects, the Hive startup delivering the world's first closed-loop business process optimization platform that accelerates a customer's digital transformation journey. Bobby joins Live Objects after serving as the SVP of WW Channels and Alliances at Salesforce, Chief Revenue Officer at Twilio, SVP of WW Field Operations at eMeter, and EVP Sales and Strategic Partnerships at Enlightened, both which were acquired by Siemens, and most recently, CRO at Next Trucking, a startup disrupting the $800 billion freight trucking industry. Hi, Bobby. Thanks for joining us virtually today.
Hi there, Matti. Thank you so much for having me. I'm pretty excited about not just today, but what we're going to talk about for the next 6 hours.
Yes, and I'm so excited to hear more about it, and I know that our viewers are too. Before we jump into your impressive career, can we just take a step back for a minute? I'd really love if you could share something maybe about who or what has shaped who you are today, like what makes you tick, how you got started on this journey to begin with.
You know, when we had you'd sent the questions over, I thought to myself, we could spend the majority of the time on that question alone, unpacking it, because I think that first of all, I've been doing this for 32 years, and so I'm a half a century old. So you can only imagine along that journey that the folks, not just the people, but the process to get there and who helped and do those influences. And I'm sure a lot of people might have the same answer, but I have to be straightforward and honest. And it would be my mother. And I say that, I see you surprised. My grandparents were both immigrants. And so my parents were first real generation workers and blue collar workers. And one of the things that she instilled and at a very young and early age is the fundamentals of what hard work. And that it's actually ironic. Most of my people that know me today, I love working and I love building and growing. And so for that reason alone, I thank her. And that I think gives me a foundational baseline of achieving for excellence. And that is, you ask what makes me tick. I like winning. And I like sports. And so there's a lot of analogies to sports. And I tried to take a lot of that throughout my career. But it was probably my first real job in the industry. And it happened to be a family-run business. So most people would go, oh, that's interesting. But they had been in business for 75 years. And when you think about the topic, the transformation, today they're over 100 years old. They're still private. It's probably an $8 or $9 billion company. And the family member, his name is Izzy Schwab. His sons run it. It's D&H Distributing. And I'm still friends with them, which I believe is a testament to the type of relationships you can really build and then have for 30 years later. And Izzy was the CEO and ran the company. And he afforded me, I didn't directly report to him, but the opportunity to grow throughout my career. And it's really rare that as a young 20-something who didn't graduate college to have someone take an affection that you really didn't know other than he saw as a hard worker and gave me every opportunity. And then throughout time, I tried to really apply, just give me an opportunity and allow me to learn, fail, prove, and thank God it's been somewhat successful.
Wow, that's a really incredible story, and thank you for sharing that personal history for you too. It's really interesting to hear about just your family and how you learned how to work hard and how that's really motivated you to get to where you are today. So, can you tell us about your journey as a business leader at various disruptive technology companies? So, how did you
Yes.
get from working with this family-operated business to kind of where you are now dealing with technology businesses?
So it's interesting that will come full circle to one of the questions we're going to touch later, which is why this opportunity. So this company had reinvented themselves, and being in business that long, they clearly weren't in computer distribution. And I had entered when they themselves were getting into computers and games and satellites. So that was in the 80s. And that was when we were really transitioning to the first digital things that we would use as consumers and in the business life. And so I literally started selling green screen Sperry terminals in the mainframe days. And
Okay.
we're gonna mark that because as we come forward, I spent 7 years there, and they afforded me opportunity to launch a software division because we were primarily hardware distribution. And in doing so, I had met a couple of guys who were distributing their product, and we hit it off. And they were looking for someone to come and join them to manage distribution, an area that I had clearly known. And so growing up in Pennsylvania, having a great job, having a family treat me well, it was a conundrum I found myself in as a young man. And I took a leap of faith and joined a company called Creative Technologies, which was probably the first real skyrocket that I was able to get on. And unbeknownst to myself, I learned so much there. I spent about 7 years, and we were the fastest growing company in the world for the first half of the 90s. We were the third company after two smaller companies that you probably heard of, Intel and Microsoft, to reach 100 million users.
I think I've heard of
And
them.
yeah, and we created what is known as sound for the PC today. So at a point in time, we had one of the largest standards and more market share, which is a 99% market share, which is today the Justice Department probably would never allow that to happen to any company. And yeah, and along that journey, I learned a variety of business models where we did an OEM deal, which gave us the ubiquity of every PC and every software being developed for that. And then you realize that you could have upgrade paths. And I would say that we actually pioneered CAC and LTV, which are two terms that are used today, way before folks even knew what it was, and allowed us to get there. And in that journey, we had a lot of things go right and a lot of things go wrong. We had another small company, actually. We were the first MP3 player. And our CEO, Sim, went to Cupertino one day, and he came back, and we actually had given up some of the rights after doing a meeting with Apple, and that was the beginning of the iPod. And we knew we probably couldn't have beat them at their game, and so we kind of acquiesced. And Sim took his big chunk of money and reinvested in a lot of other things that helped drive other areas within the organization. But during that, I was probably too young to know and understand that at every company you work at, you couldn't have that much market share and that much leadership, but I didn't know any better. And so when you go in with that mindset, you start thinking, well, not was it easy, but that was easy. And now let's do it again and again. And our COO had left, and he had gone to an internet company in the late 90s. And that's where the internet was starting to become big. And we had a platform for folks that wanted to get onto the internet but didn't know how. And I say folks, not consumers, real world companies. And so it was a media platform focused on, and we did deals with Cartoon Network and MTV and NBC. And this was them taking from a website to interactive. And so it was interactive chat with avatars and some VoIP. And the pipes were too small, and because we had Skype-like capabilities in 98 and 99. And there was no advertising model. And eventually we shut the company down. One of our big investors, OpenText, who's still around today, was really investing for the communication layer. And so they had got the assets and kept moving along. And a couple of us knew that we were onto something. So I took the co-founders and we started a company called State Software. Because what was it? The genesis was the real-time web. And if you think of chat and communication, it was the first real-time things we were ever doing on the web. And at first was text, and then it became voice. And today, look at what we're doing in real time. It's unbelievable.
Right.
And at State Software, for unfortunate reasons, we went to launch the company in about 2001. You might not remember that year. It was a really horrible year. It was a big crash, and even funded companies weren't getting funded. And so we tried to sell the company, and it was three obvious places, or four if you count them. Because we were the development environment to make real-time web applications, it was IBM, Oracle, Sun, or BEA. And they were all fighting for that infrastructure layer, because the only thing interactive at the time was Macromedia and Flash. And that was really not just one way. It was no two-way. And we couldn't get funding, and we thought, oh my God, this is horrible, and no one wants to buy us. What will we do? And so we ended up, BEA was a close at the very end, said, look, we don't see IT spending going after this. We'd like to hire you, but we're not going to purchase your company. And we went back, and as founders, we sat there, just five of us, and said, oh my gosh, this is a horrible time. But we open sourced the product. And I'm beyond proud to say it runs on about 99% of the websites around the world. That's a true statement. It's a standard today called JSON. So even though we didn't make money, the lessons I learned in ubiquity and being on everything, we actually got to apply, and we unleashed it. So JSON, which everyone uses, came out of State Software. And that's where I really understood, wow, the power of developers, the power of networks, the power of open source, just not the monetization of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So I joined BEA, and I ran everything from our joint venture with Intel, which is important for what we want to do. Because I said the Sperry green screens. Well, at BEA, the joint venture with Intel was around silicon to success, all through software. And so the goal was, how can we take these mainframe applications and begin migrating them into a client server world so that people could upgrade and become modern at that time. Whereas you're calling it today in most companies, this digital transformation, which I have a whole belief system in myself. And we created these practices with system integrators all around the world that created these repeatable frameworks that allowed us to propel ourselves to be number one in the Java space. So here we beat Sun, who created Java, and we beat them hands down every day. And the same with IBM. And so all of a sudden I got that knack back at, oh my gosh, through a partner ecosystem. And so it was all the ISVs that would build on top of us, all the system integrators that would deploy it around the world. And these are names you're familiar with today, the Accentures, the Deloittes, big names because they needed to build out the infrastructure. And before I took that job, our sponsor there who was going to purchase us introduced me to a gentleman that you probably recognize the name today, but you might not have, Mark Benioff. And while we hit it off, Mark said he wanted me to join. We were building a family and going to another startup in my early 30s. It felt safer to go to BA, and I'm thankful that it happened that way. And about 2.5 years later, Mark and I remained in contact, and he said, listen, your name keeps coming up. We need to build this out, and come join us. And so about 4 months later, I said yes. Not really knowing what I was getting myself into. It was a small company. We were really selling CRM, and my task was to build out an ecosystem that never existed. And everyone thought no software means no services, means no ecosystem. And we only had a small set of players there, names you never heard of at the time, Blue Wolf, Red Sky. I could go on, and you go. And today those were sold to billion-dollar companies like IBM and others who realized I can't build it, so I'll acquire it. But part of that journey was to begin showing how you could move, just like I said, from mainframe to client server to the cloud. And at the time, it was not the cloud, it was software as a service. And so as the creator of the App Exchange and really the father of platform as a service, along with a gentleman named Steve Fisher, who was my technical counterpart to build this out, we created what today is approaching $1 trillion ecosystem and a moat that surrounds Salesforce that just yesterday allowed them to be more valuable than Oracle. And if you think about it, for me, that's what was a really proud accomplishment, just because although I'm not there, I'm still friends with Mark and the others. To have created something that's built, lasted time, has been beyond successful. Then you start thinking, oh gosh, what else can I start applying these theories to? So we again had migration practices to move to the cloud. And the biggest bet was with Accenture. Today, the fastest growing, most profitable business for them is their cloud practice, run by Sudeep Raj, who I met 18 years ago. And we put in that role, and we're still friends today. And he's a happy camper. And I think you all know where the cloud went from there. I took that challenge thinking, great, I've learned so much. How do I share it? Where can we help change the world? I got on that good kick. And a friend of mine over at Sequoia Capital said, listen, we invested in the smart grid, come learn a little bit. I had zero desire. So I was a babysitter for this company while we were replacing the CEO. And all of a sudden I realized how important power really was on a global basis. And you probably know that none of this would happen without it, but you start looking at other countries and it's a really big issue. Do we build more power plants? And so we had a platform that allowed you to really manage consumption. And it's really called shave the peak and round the curve. So you wouldn't have brownouts, no blackouts. And the company had eight customers, 2 were suing us. And I thought, this is not anything I want to get involved with. And we interviewed a gentleman named Gary Bloom. Gary sold Veritas to Oracle, I think, for $14 billion. He's well known in our industry. And Gary said, if you join, I'll join. And we did it. We changed the business model and we made a smart meter a subscriber like we did at Salesforce. And all of a sudden we changed the business model so that you can have a smart meter. And you probably have heard smart meters are now around the world. So each one looked like a user so that we could then have an expandable revenue stream. We proved it out so much. My goal was to recreate the App Exchange for their electricity that Siemens bought us. It would have also required a lot more investment because there's hardware, and you can imagine electrical infrastructure is much larger than some cloud stuff. And so post selling that organization, I thought, wow, that was easy. Everyone uses, 9 out of 10 people in the world consume electricity. What else do they consume? And a friend of mine over at Bessemer, Byron, who we met during the App Exchange days, goes, there's this company, Twilio, and they could really use some guidance and some help. They're doing about 6 million in revenue, and we think something's there. And after spending a couple of months looking at the opportunity, I thought, wow, not only is a there, but this could be the first part of what I think is the next decade or two, and that's the API economy. So it's the next big macro trend of where we are today. So I joined, and we built the foundation that's actually allowed Twilio today to be worth $31 billion and really consume it. And what really intrigued me there was if we could figure a way to unleash messaging and texts and touch the phones in the world. Well, if you know this, there's 6 billion people, there's 6 billion smartphones, and we were hitting about 80% of them. So when you think of ubiquity, that's a lot of reach that you could start changing, and you don't even know what applications will be created because you could have never reached that many people. And shortly after that, I helped a couple of other startups. There's a theme. I love sharing what I've learned with founders who want to. And so today I'm a mentor for the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And most recently this week, we had one of the folks that I'm assisting get an award. And that to me is as rewarding as winning, because you get to see someone else take what you want to, I call it teaching and preaching. Mm-hmm. And if they adopt it, that's a really, really great feeling. And so I thought, wow, what else is really big? And a friend of mine said, look, you should talk to these folks over at Enlighted. IoT is big. So you'll see these buzzwords I may follow, and sometimes a little too early. And the goal was they had sensors that went into ceilings. And I learned a lesson. I passed on Nest, realizing the same thing because it was for consumers. So this was the commercial version. And I thought, well, there's way more opportunity there. Right. And if we had sensors in ceilings, then I could put together a network inside of property, which is the largest asset on everyone's balance sheet. I could create an app exchange. And just last month, we ended up selling the company to Siemens again because of infrastructure and heavy lifting. Just last month, they launched what would be their equivalent of the app exchange and did a deal with Salesforce with work.com. So a compelling event called a pandemic forced them into creating how the company that created the largest business exchange to do business with them. And I got to see two of my ideas come together, and that was really rewarding as well.
What a trip.
Yeah. And then we'll quickly, the trucking one was, my father was a trucker. I shared with you very humble upbringings. And I thought, if I could retire and have my last job in LA on the beach, outside of LA actually, and every trucker could make $1,000 a day, that my father would look down and be proud of me, and it'd be a great way to end my career. And after a year into it, I realized that there's far greater things that I can do, and mainly because I've met Ravi and Sadupto, who fell into a passion theme of mine, which is how do we make a bigger industry get better, and how do we empower the people to do that, and what are the roles we can create, and how do we create new jobs? Because I don't want people to think always technology displaces them. Right. And so now you fast forward, you go, wow, that's a lot of transition of technology change. How do we end up where we are? And what it really is a compilation of building not just theories, but best practices of making ecosystems be able to thrive and survive and grow. And as a technology provider, you become paramount to their success, but only when the customer loves it. And so one of the themes you'll see is I'm maniacal about customers and customer success, just because without them, none of us would exist.
Absolutely. And can I just say, what an incredible journey you've had. I mean, so interesting. And, I love how devoted you are to the big vision, and taking your experiences and constantly trying to say, okay, now how can I go out and take this and make even more positive change in the world, and constantly having the thirst for creating successful businesses, but driven by all of the right motivations, right? And making a difference, and just, even tying it, throughout your friendships and the synchronicity of everything. Just what a phenomenal journey you've had. So interesting, and so great that you've been able to make all these positive impacts in the world. Particularly how I love too that you're really trying to create more jobs and balance out that, yes, automation is going to be changing the workspace, but it's not just taking away things. We're also going to be adding things, and there's going to be all sorts of new opportunities. So I'm I think that's just fantastic. And just again, such a unique journey. So what about these unique experiences, Bobby? What about that either prepared you or attracted you to your role with live objects? I know you were just starting to touch on that about how how you've met Ravi and Zipto. Could you kind of talk more about that?
Most certainly. If you think of that journey that I was fortunate enough to be able to participate and have and enjoy fairly good successes along the way, you see these patterns and you match them. And if you think about it for us, like just in general. So I have a daughter, she's in school. Now she's not in school, but while she was, I knew her grades, I knew everything about it. You as a consumer, we order something on Amazon, I know when it's arriving. Think of our consumer lives. Why the hell is our business life not like that? Like, think about that. It's horrible. It's like torture for some people. And not just some people, like 90% of the world have hell at work. And when you think of the transitions that I've been participating in, is always making life better for classes of people, but rarely the end user. And I have a belief that for the first time, what we're doing at Live Objects is we can unpackage that and actually allow that to surface so close to the actual users that it's not about the UI, it's about how they engage and how they get the information. And that's mainly because it was too costly before, because it's all about the processes. So think about what Splunk does for mining logs. Well, all a log is what did you, and not like to displace it, because they too are very, very valuable and priceless for our industry. All of our interactions on the web and what we do are logged, and they get to mine it and create ways to advertise, ways to do things for you and interpret it. Well, that's a great, and it's mature. And I would say process mining and what comes beyond that is just the next generation. Imagine the reason in our consumer life we're probably successful. We wake up, we get dressed, we eat. That's a pattern, that's a process. And we have that repeatability that allows us to get it right. Well, businesses do that, but it has rigidity and it's got dependencies. Now think about the business that has that mainframe I sold them 32 years ago, and some of them still have those screens running. It's a true story if you go into some government agencies in different places. And you then go, all right, so then you went to client server, those applications you built at BEA, especially in the telcos and FinServ still operating. Then you sold them more stuff at Salesforce, and then they custom built stuff. And oh, by the way, at Twilio, they use this for their API for their customer engagement. So it's highly likely that most Fortune 2000 companies have 2 or 3 or 4 of the technologies I've sold. And what Live Objects says is take them all together to seamlessly take those processes and tell you where you have leakage, where you have breakdown, how you could do it better. And never before, other than hiring tens of thousands of consultants to come in and open your books and turn pages, which is too costly. And you might see some smiling. This is my 8th week on the job, and I tried to get out, although we don't get out and touch consumers and customers and people. When they see a demo of what we do, I told someone it's no different than when I showed force.com and platform for the service that everyone said that can't be real, you don't do it. And when we showed them, just like today, when I get someone's data, and maybe my ask is some of the viewers, if this is your company or you sit on a board or you work at them, I'm here to help you. The magic that happens. And it's actually unbelievable. So last week, 2 weeks ago, we closed our first customer since I've been on board. And just by taking our new go-to-market themes, we've probably got in the last 3 weeks a truly active pipeline of 25, over 25, because we just finished a call before this. Opportunities that we're going to close 5 in the next 4 to 5 weeks that weren't even in our pipeline last month, because we got to show them the power of what we do.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I see you smiling.
Yeah, I'm excited for you guys.
Take that culmination to a point in time where computing is cheap. The cloud is up and accepted. Now, we say the cloud is up and accepted. I could read some stats to you. 80% of IT spend does not go to the cloud. So guess what that money I'm going after? I'm going after 80% of the budget that's out there. So I want to help them migrate to the cloud, and the processes that are the most painful and the workloads that need to belong there. And then we're going to figure out how we become so important to the cloud providers that they won't be able to live without having a relationship with us. In our early conversations with some of them, it's reminiscent of Salesforce, where I was a heretic and I was a lunatic and I was an a-hole, because we showed them ways we're going to break their business, and they hated it, but they then adopted it and flourished. And every new disruptive technology does that. And so
if you can't beat them, join them, right?
Look, Look, I could go down a list of names of companies from the real world to the old world that missed out. We could start with Blockbuster, Sears, we could go to EDS, and we can compact, like just pick every industry. The people that did not actually evolve or digitally transform, which I don't agree with, and I'll tell you why. Because you look, did you digitally transfer? Did you transform your clothing, or did you buy a new piece of clothing every month? You keep your wardrobe stylish, just like people should, but in the enterprise you can't, because the processes are too rigid. You don't have the resources and the people, and we help unlock those capabilities.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So that's interesting. I was just about to ask you, what digital transformation means to you. Um, and
Yeah.
so so you're saying that you look at it in a different way, and you're hinting at that earlier. And I kind of really want to hear about exactly, if you can elaborate a little bit more about why you view it differently, maybe building on the clothing example you just gave, and why live objects. I really appreciated your illustration about the cloud, for example, about how live objects is going to be a key player for corporations in that journey. But how does it all play together? The digital transformation, or maybe you have a better
Yeah.
explanation of it, and how live objects is integral to that journey.
Well, if you were to think that I want to start on a digital transformation as a company, just pick any company, any department, even a person, or your house, I want to transform it. You have to start with, where do I start? Well, that starts with your processes. And if you don't know where to start, where do you start? And that's why you see RPA failing. Think about it. RPA is next generation outsourcing done by bots, because they're not intelligent enough to actually do anything. And that's why the RPA vendors went out and bought what I would call some cute process tools to let them look like they actually know what they're doing. I'm not buying it, to be honest. And hopefully none of you are investors in those companies.
Controversial. Okay, it's good.
I'm coming for you, just to know I am, for sure. And yes, if you can't beat them, join them. So my name is Bobby. No, you know that. Anyway, so uh, and so on that, you can actually start with how things work. Then you can figure out what you need to change, because you understand where you have leakage or opportunity. And so I believe, and one of the next questions, or one of them subsequent, is we could be where 9 out of 10 companies actually use us or something like us to chart where they want to go, because we'll have given them a roadmap. The I can't claim to take credit other than exploiting it. One of our coworkers, Vinod, who was our first employee, said it best to me, because I kept asking, like, why does it work, and what's the consumerization? So I'll ask you a question. Where do you live? And you have to tell me the address in town, or
I live in the Bay Area. I live in the East Bay Area.
I'll
I
do
live
it
in
better.
Pleasant.
Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised in the Bay Area. I lived in San Diego for a while, but I came back to the Bay Area.
So we'll take San Diego. So let's say you lived in San Diego and you lived in the gas lamp district, or we'll pick any Point Loma. Well, if I were to put that in, and I were to put my home address, and I hit go on Google Maps, what would it do to me? It would tell me how to get there,
Yes.
the most efficient way,
Yes.
and it would do it like that.
Yes.
That is exactly what Live Objects does for every enterprise infrastructure, to tell you, where do you have bottlenecks, where are the potholes, where are the roads broken down. And I do it almost as quickly as what that Google Map search does. Now think about the power of that. They've never seen it. So now if you're an enterprise, you're going, I don't have a pothole, I don't have a pitfall, but they do, because why? Data doesn't lie, unless it's dirty data, and we can tell you that. So if I could start showing you that Google map of your entire enterprise and where you have problems, you now have the ability to have a roadmap of where to go. This is really important to our go-to-market, by the way. If I have a roadmap where to go, I might not have the trucks, or I might have the transportation or the wherewithal, but the system integrators and the partner community does. And today specifically, it's unprecedented the amount of strength or resources they all have on their bench, just waiting to go to work, because this pandemic has slowed things down. Imagine if I'm able to empower companies with a tool that tells them where to go and how to get there, and then have a partner ecosystem that says, not only can I take you there now, I have all these people ready. So now as an SI, I get to actually match my capacity of need, which has never really happened in the 30 years that I've been doing this. Because every other downturn, people were not required to make change. Now, let me walk you through the change. Let's take it this way. What percentage of commerce in America is e-commerce? and I may grab my phone for this because I'll read you a couple of stats.
Yeah, please, please.
But what percentage of commerce in America is e-commerce?
Oh, am I supposed to guess?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna say, I don't know. Maybe I'm a millennial, so remember that. I'm gonna like 70%.
So, well, just because you're a millennial, all that really means is that you probably already do e-commerce, and you would guess 70%.
Yeah.
So, e-commerce as a percentage of total commerce grew from 6% to 16% from
Okay.
2010 to 2020. So, in a decade. Then from January of this year until July, right now, the month we're in, has grown to 27%.
Wow.
11% growth in 5 months. Now, how many of those companies do you think were digitally prepared for that or forced upon it because a change occurred?
Right.
Like none.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
So that tells me I have 76% more to go. And I still have the 26% that haven't really taken all their processes and understand what it means to come digital. So I get to enable them all to realize what a modern company can be.
Right. And how much more efficient, and just all of what you're saying too, especially in these sorts of times. You're offering solutions that everyone is looking for right now, really. And especially with tougher times, people want to be more efficient for sure. So your roadmap where you can say, hey, this is actually where you need to, divert your resources to, or this is what you can expect to be going up against, and this is what you guys should be focusing on. I mean, how much more useful can that be?
Well, you just said it, and you just actually said our biggest competition is not the people that are out there. Awareness and education that this is possible. And as a disruptor of many industries for too long, you know that. And so you've created things like new roles. There was never a customer success manager before Salesforce because no one had to do renewals. And I could go on and on about the roles you create that allow people to say, I want to have that job. I want to get paid more. I want to add more value. And it's the new technologies that allow people to rise up and understand. Now, early on, I mentioned the power back to the people. We went through most of the companies I've worked were developers. We as consumers use them because I know that you don't even know you use Twilio, but you might use Uber. You might use, well, maybe now you might not. You might use Tinder, but all of those apps are powered by companies that are ubiquitous for the things that we take advantage of, but it's usually on the consumer side. And our goal is how do we start bringing them into the enterprise so that we can have that same type of experience and efficiencies.
Right, absolutely. And why should work where we're spending most of our time be more rigid and antiquated than our personal consumer life, right? I mean, that's crazy. So wow, what you're describing is so revolutionary. And I know you were kind of touching on this. So what is this sort of revolutionizing the way systems integrations works with companies? Is this one of the major macro trends that you see in the industry, or what other macro trends do you see, and how will live objects play a role in those macro trends? Or is live objects kind of, I think what you're alluding to, are they going to even create new macro trends, which is really kind of where I see this going?
Yes, I think it's a little bit of both. It's too early, and given the audience this is going to, I can only share some aspirational moments, but I shared it last night again with Sadupta, our co-founder, the main man driving the show this morning on our, Fridays, we try to do, and make sure he gets his exercise. So we do a walk and talk. We did a 5-mile hike at 7 this morning, and it allowed us to really get out and in these times, get out and really let our minds reach. And so, I have a theory and a thesis that I'm working on, but it feels as though it's coming together. So when you think of macro trends, the e-commerce one I just gave you is huge. No one would have ever predicted that what took 10 years only took 5 months, and it beat it. I mean, think about that.
Right.
What's going to happen next that will compel that? Supply chains. Yeah, I see you shaking your head.
Huge
Like,
right
think
now.
about it.
Yeah,
They're
right.
huge. And you don't even know where your disruption. We spoke to I won't tell the name, the largest shipping company in the world. Shipping meaning I own some ships and I've tripped those cans, and about 20% of the world is actually carried by them to some other country to get consumed. And their biggest problem is the leakage and the understanding of the diversification of supply chains in real time. My last job actually gave me a lot of that insight, because what intrigued me about that, you're talking about ubiquity. Look in your room. None of that was made in America. It was all shipped here to us. So when you start thinking of those industries, and then you talk about pharma, and I also believe there'll be a lot of consolidation in a macro trend because small companies won't survive. And big companies, okay, this is the big winning one, which we'll launch. Imagine if my tool or our technology could let you go into a company we're going to purchase and quickly, like a day or two, I could run it against all their processes and I could then benchmark them and go, you get an F, I'm not paying you, you're not worth that. You get an A, I'll pay you more because you have the best, most efficient processes and I can actually fuel your growth, not fix your problems. Think
Right.
about that. It's
Right.
like if I had a health check on my body and someone said, I want to pay you because you're the best athlete, but I don't know it. Well, look, you don't get a contract as an athlete unless you pass a physical.
Right. Right.
So those
Right.
same analogies apply to businesses. And
And
I
there we are
think
with the sports again.
back to the sports again, because yes, because nobody remembers number two. But the macro trend was, and it's not really a trend that's going to be macro that's accelerated. The cloud clearly will. Look, forecasts show that by 2025, it's going to be $500 billion. That's significant growth. Today, less than 10% of IT spend is on the cloud. Think
Wow.
about that. Yes, 80% I get to go after. And I get to tell them not only do you have to not spend that money, you can save it and you can effectively move the pieces that you want and make those more efficient before you get there. So the other stat I was going to tell you, you asked the macro trend from 2009 to 19, so another decade, IT grew from 3.2 to 3.8 trillion. So quite big, but not that big of growth. It's about 20% growth, which is big. Enterprise software grew that same time because IT spending enterprise software is a piece from 220 billion to 430, doubled. So that's even, so 20, now we did 50% growth. Software as a service grew from 7 billion to 95 billion. So now we went from 2x, 5x, 10x.
Yeah.
So 12 times growth, and it's only 3% of IT spend.
So you can just go after that. Like
We're just getting started.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. Wow. So so there's so many different areas that you're going to be, you're really going after here, right? So you're going after all these different things. So what will success look like then? Like how, if obviously there's so many different areas in which you can enter into the business and help them revolutionize how they're doing their business. How do you imagine success looks like for Live Objects?
That's a great question. So I think you can measure success in a variety of measurements. First of all, customer success is the first one, right? If we can show the value, and I learned this from Mark, which is why the customer see, and I had it before that just because of the love of touching. When you see people, seeing people hear things on their computer for the first time 25 years ago, they were like, this is unbelievable. I need more of that, and multimedia and everything that we have today. And the same thing happens. So success for me is when we're referred to like, oh, I Googled it, or I love this, and I love that. The love word is important for me. And I want people to love our technology, but they're only going to love that if people love working here. And the people are only going to love working here is if we create an environment. And the only way they're going to do that is we actually take a lot of the lessons learned in my journey and the people that we bring, and we build a company that doesn't exist in the market today. And I know some of your further questions, so I won't steal the thunder from those. Success for me looks like, if I look back a decade, and this is the way I look at taking this role. You asked a question that I hadn't done and answered. Look, I love Sedupto and Michael and our co-founders. And if I could work in the next decade and we could build in 10 years something that I think will change and transform not just an industry, multiple industries, and provide new roles for folks that are going to school to say, I don't need to be a data scientist to actually use it because I use Live Objects, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And that helped me learn and do in that. When you become part of someone's vernacular, that you've enabled them to have a better life, regardless if I work there or I use it to make my job easier, that's success to me.
Absolutely. When you enter the lexicon and you enter the,
Yes.
the fabric of the culture, that's really, so that's how you'll know, you've made it. That's your benchmark for success. And kind of tying into that then, and I think this is kind of what you're alluding to, but maybe something that's more So that's the 10-year dream and vision. Can you tell me if you did have a crystal ball? And I mean, obviously, if 2020 has taught us anything, nothing is for certain, which obviously you just shared those crazy stats too about how things that you wouldn't have never predicted to change so rapidly have done so. So, nothing's for certain, but if you could look to 5 years in the future in a crystal ball, what would you see for live objects? Like what concretely, maybe not necessarily being a part of the fabric of the culture, but where do you see live objects in 5 years?
Whether it's live objects or someone that tries to do what we're setting out to achieve and do, I think that every every application that we use, whether consumer and business, should almost have its own intelligence to make the processes better for consumers, right? I mean, think about again the consumer life and every day. We're using things that make it easier and better, and we don't use that in the enterprise. Imagine if our software actually allowed you to get that navigation, and just like a self-driving car, we could take you there, and we actually did it on electricity from the sun, and all of a sudden we create new industries that never even existed because they didn't know they could do this, much like we did at most of the other places I worked. That to me is success, really creating new industries because technology has unlocked value never foreseen.
Wow, I'm really excited for you guys. You have me sold. I would put money in you.
We have.
Yes, we have. So how are you and you were just talking about getting new customers on board. Are you planning on doing like a capital raise right now? Is that in the plans, or what's
Great
the
question. So, thank God we have Robbie, and I know that's one of the things we'll talk about. It's been a joy to work with, and he's been him and his married men band of folks have helped us get to this point, and so we're beyond grateful. And so we've taken on seed funding through them. And during this stage, my goal is to double our seed and lock it down in the next 45 to 60 days. This is my first interview. Most of my friends don't even know I have a job yet. And I did that intentionally because they're going to call me to say, we need to do business with you. And I'm not ready to tell them how we do it and what's our pricing and all of that. So we've been slow rolling it. And we shared it with one of my VC friends who's at a large, well-known firm 2 weeks ago. And he's like, look, we're all in. We just need you to show some customers. We're betting on you. And now we met the team and we're yes. So my goal is we get a seed, round out our seed. That money will project to take us through 2021. But my gut and experience tells me that based on the pipeline I see and the real conversations that I've now been involved in the last 3 or 4 weeks, that this is going to tee us up to get all of our pattern matching done in the next 2 quarters so that I could be in a position to raise a sizable A in the first or second quarter, because I'll have proven all my metrics and I'll have a couple of big deals that show it. And I'll hopefully start becoming a household name more quickly than I think than most folks will have anticipated based on some of the things we're going to share in the next 90 days.
Okay. Wow. That's really exciting. And as you're doing this and you're raising, obviously now you haven't been in the office because of the current pandemic situation we're in. But we are going to miss seeing you guys. I'm good friends with Vinod and Sudipto and the whole team. It's been a pleasure seeing the team grow and knowing everyone that's a part of it. And they're all great minds, great people. But I am excited for you guys and this new chapter. With that being said, is there anything else that you'd like to share about your experience working with the Hive now that you're going to officially be moving out as you're raising money and funding?
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. When I say the word joy, people that know me are the folks that will watch this video that get to know me, as I'm pretty straightforward and honest, and that's both goes good and bad depending on what you see is what you get. So there's something good or bad. If you ask my daughter, she thinks it's bad, right? Because this is straightforward. Is that that experience was with Robbie when I met him, and he's got to do his job, and he's got a little bit of Barnum and Bailey in him, which he needs to do to actually pump the people up and get them there. And so from that perspective, his model's phenomenal. At first I was like, oh my God, we're going to talk every week. What are we going to talk about? Especially the early weeks. And now I can't wait to talk to him. He's like, okay, I'll talk to you later. I was like, no, I want to share this. What is it? And it's really just in the ability to have some excitement sharing together. And also because I believe, the 2.5 years that Live Objects has spent was really on technology and validation. And so we're coming to my favorite part, which is the commercialization and the go-to-market. And someone asked the question the other day, what's your business model and why don't you know? And I said, I'm happy. I'm not like some of our competitors where I just got a $75 million building in New York that no one can use, that I have 2,000 salespeople that can't go and sell. And I've got this albatross called that. I'm most excited about getting design new ways to go to market in the pandemic. My belief is I'm going to change the way selling gets done in the enterprise, which I'm really excited about, having done it before and really now forced to do it. And I think exiting the Hive is going to force us, because now we are remote. How do we help remote people?
Right.
And the follow-on support that we've got has been phenomenal. March is one of the investors through the Hive and now through us. And I met with them along my journey, and we had a chat, and they're going to help us in the enterprise. So I think about not just the Hive, but the meaning of the Hive and all these things around it. The bees, all those bees can come help me and help us, and I can help you as well. And so when you start thinking about the Hive, it's a family working together, and I'm feeling it. You don't always get that out of incubators. You hear VCs and they talk about it and what they do for you, and that's not the case. And so far, it's been nothing but a joy. And I'm thankful that he brought me in and trusted me with this crown jewel, and that together we're going to grow our family.
Oh, we love hearing that. I know Ravi's going to love hearing that. You guys have been great to work with, and we're so excited to have you on the team, Bobby. And you're clearly a mover and a shaker with your history and just with already what you've been doing I think it's been 6 weeks that you've been with the Hive?
8 weeks this week. 8 weeks today. Yeah.
8 weeks today. And I heard a whisper, I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing this, that maybe you have a new name for Live Objects. Is that?
We do. So it wasn't that we didn't like Live Objects. It's interesting. You ask a question that, what did I learn early on? And the reference to D&H actually was something I learned, which is called built to last. Since then, people have written books about it. And I forget who wrote the actual book. It's probably on my shelf behind me. Having lived the built to last is one of the things I think of when I go into the companies today, and especially now that I'm older. We couldn't use Live Objects in 3 large countries, UK, China, and India. And so given that from a go-to-market and a name branding, someone else has used it, we had to come up with something. It forced us also to really internalize, what do we do? What do we mean? And how can our new name embody and embolden what we stand for? And so we're probably a week or 2 away. And I'm most proud that it's going to have multiple meanings, not just for what we want to do as a company and to companies, but how we want to start helping companies think about what they build. And I'm going to use this to jump into one of your next questions around there are words that I don't ever want us to use as a company, like inclusion, like diversity. And there's a reason for that. I grew up in a very interracial neighborhood in Pennsylvania. And so most of my friends were already of people of color and of all colors. And so it's also probably when I grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where it was more normal to actually have that. And so if you think about the opportunity to build a company where you have no barriers and walls because you're not Frankenstein bolting them on. Think of the companies that talk about it today. They have to. Why? They got an all-male board. Why? They have to. They all, right? Well, you need that because you have to defend your position. If you never have to defend where you come from and you build what I'm terming a new modern company because this is the attributes we all want, I will be more proud if we can build that and a real melting pot of a company, because that I think will bring success, because the best and brightest people will want to work there. And I'm not just saying it. We opened it up for a young woman on our team, Monisha, who you might have met.
Love Monisha, yeah.
So we were talking, and Monisha had a really good talk track. I'll just take a minute here. And I said, so how's it been? And she goes, well, it's interesting. I asked myself that question. What did I learn in the 18 months here? And what did I accomplish? And I'm struggling. And I said, well, what was your expectation? And she goes, I don't know. And I go, well, then how do you know you haven't learned it?
Fair enough.
And And it turned out that what she had realized was she had learned, and that perhaps some of the enterprise discipline that Sadupto and Michael were instilling into us. Look at two guys that have sold billions of dollars of built billions of dollars of product that was sold and consumed and people use. Developers out of school don't have any of that history. And so Manisha kicked off for us the Developer Manifesto. Now think about that. At what time can you, as a first job coming out, and get to create the Developer Manifesto to what I think is going to be a technology company around for the next decades, like many of the ones I've worked for? And so she's going to write, along with the rest of our team, what developers want to do. And for each department, my job, while I believe in servant leadership, my job is really, how do I lead and empower the people based on what I learned and keep them from, we all know not to run with scissors for a reason.
Yeah.
That's my job. And to give them the creativity, they can play with the scissors, but that they can't do that. And if I can foster an environment where generations like the Monishas or the Sids, and you look at the other team members that we have, the Bryants, want to come here from the schools like the Berkeleys, the Carnegie Mellons, not because we're going to go create apps that let me take pictures of things to share with people, but to change the world, empower people to not do the mundane tasks of paperwork, but actually do creative things. I'll be happy. I mean, think about creating a company in like times like this. You'll do things because you have to and because you're allowed to. 10 years ago, I might not have been able to do that. People might have said, I'm not going to fund you because you talk like that. People might have said, I don't believe that you can do that. Now I hope I can dispel them having done it and having had the people help me build this, that you can sit and say, no, you have to believe me. Ask the people. And those will be our employees that want to come to work. And we might not get to this. We worked on our value system, and it actually is a stacked model, and it's an internal outturn. On the very base of it, I'll just share two, and it is work will be fun and no BS. And I say that having been in, if you look where I've worked, there's been a combination of some of that along the way, but there's no politics, no after meetings. There's just none of that bullshit I'll tolerate. And it's not a my way highway. It's just the right way.
Yeah.
And on the work fun, you already know I love to work, and if it's not going to be fun, people aren't going to want to come. And Fun Bobby likes to have fun at work, and so we can actually do that and deliver on results at the same time.
Absolutely. I like the Friends reference.
I
I love that. But also, really, I so strongly believe, what you're touching on and what you're doing with your company, and what I studied and I truly believe in the world is about meaningful work. And as the future of work is here and arriving, and this concept and construct that people talk about, oh, the future of work, and automation and taking over jobs, and what you guys are talking about, right? Where you're taking your technology and you're taking the paper and the admin stuff out. And what you're allowing to do is, okay, now how do we take out this other stuff using technology so that we can make work more meaningful? How can people show up and get truly meaning out of their job and make meaningful impact in the world? So it's meaning layered on top of meaning, layered on top of meaning, personal meaning, meaning within your organization, meaning within society. So I think that's excellent what you guys are doing, and so necessary. And this is the time. And like you're saying, maybe 10 years ago, that would have been laughed at. But now, culture and the importance of people, it's not just some nice to have. It's really, people understand, like, this is really integral to companies and to success. You have to recognize that people are people, that they're holistic beings. And if you can create an environment and work on projects where, you can find meaning and make meaning in the world, the buy-in, the corporate commitment the organizational commitment you're going to have, the engagement you're going to have with your employees is, and the end product and service that you're going to be able to deliver to your customers, and how you're going to change their lives and make their life therefore more meaningful, is just, it's truly one of those situations where it's win-win-win.
Well, that's where the no BS comes in.
Yeah.
And I really mean that. Most people would get like, that's a crazy value. And one CEO that I work for, we butted heads on a couple of items. I'm passionate about a few themes, including the customer success. and the one was really bubbling up. Well, the product might not always be delivering, and every engineer should work in support. Today, that company actually does that. And he didn't really want to talk about to all the companies some of the problems we're having. I go, well, that's shenanigans, and you say no shenanigans, and that's not true. And so the following Monday, our staff, all hands meeting was a book, and the book was called Everybody Poops.
Yeah.
And I felt, wow, he finally listened and we had a breakthrough. And it really was, look, we all have shit. And if we don't deal with it, it creates bullshit. And let's not do that.
Yeah.
And it was a big transformation of the engineering team to realize that, yes, I can build this. But if I'm an engineer and I want to build things people consume, and it's never going to make it to an art gallery, and it's not going to get sold like something that's beautiful, I'm going to be on the street like a homeless person. And so that value of customers' realization and success, and letting everyone on that journey realize how important it is.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And tying that into, you know, creating a culture and creating that sort of line of sight where they can see, oh, I really am having a meaningful impact for the final customer. And it's not always necessarily a straight, easy trajectory, but that's a part of the process, right? That even these difficulties or these setbacks or whatever, that's a part of the process too. So I very much admire your company culture so far, and I'm really excited to see what else you guys put out there. We're getting close to the end of our time. So I just want to allow the opportunity for you to share anything else about Live Objects, maybe any personal goals you have, anything else about what makes you the right guy for the job, anything at all. If you want to share more, feel free.
Yeah, the personal goal one you had asked, and I think I've woven it throughout our conversation, and I don't have a firm answer, and I will exit my next 90 days with it. One of the things that moved me in work was the foundation that Salesforce built. And that was a 1-1-1. 1% of the company, 1% of the employees' time, and 1% of the stock went to help foundations who were probably short on cash. And during that, we all got 40 hours a year that we could donate our time. And it was really to help nonprofits. I would like to figure out how we create a similar model, although we're not profitable yet, where we have this ability that as we disrupt markets, we then take that and re-employ how we re-educate people to move up throughout the ranks. And if we can create a framework that our partners can embrace that and our customers can embrace that, just imagine the change that we can affect, much like Benioff did with his foundation. And if we think about how technology displacement can actually allow people to have a better quality and enjoyment with what they do instead of paperwork or meter reading or all the other mundane BS that they go through.
Absolutely.
And so on that note, I'm thankful to have had the opportunity. And I hope that some of the folks here watching this send me an email at bobby@liveobjects.ai, and that we too can come help your company, because I know you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Bobby, it was so great. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy, literally out there changing the world. So we're just so excited to see what you and your team is going to be doing and what you guys are building. Thank you so much for sharing your journey today with us. And we look forward to seeing what you guys are going to create.
Thanks, Maddie.
Thanks. All right. Bye, Bobby.